For Jennifer and Gordon's art is up at Cumaica Coffee until August 19th. Please visit Cumaica to view the work in person. And don't forget to order some coffee or tea and snack and dine in or enjoy their sidewalk seating. They are located at 4726 Mission Street in the Excelsior, and their hours are Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Please check the chat for more information. Moving on to our first guest artist, we have Jennifer Gulassa. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, welcome. We're happy to have you with us tonight. Jennifer is a mixed media artist working with printmaking, collage, and paper cutting. So Jennifer, I love your sense of whimsy. Let's go ahead and move over to your slide. I love your sense of whimsy while depicting produce and flora. Can you briefly describe your course of evolution to where you are stylistically?
Yeah, thank you for asking, and thanks. I like the word whimsy because is so much about what I am as an artist. I really derive a lot of joy from doing the art and immersing myself in it. It's like a mindfulness activity for me, and also I hope that what I create brings other people joy. That's really my purpose. So I started out just doing paper cutout, a lot of collage, and then I went to sort of black line cutout and portraits in that way. Like here's another cutout, and putting magazine or color behind the black line.
Cool.
And then, in fact, every year I do portraits and quotes from people, and I do a social justice calendar, and I raise money for various organizations. This year I did, the two organizations I donated to were Ella Baker Center and Rice's. And every year I choose sort of a different organization that I want to support, and it's really great. I love doing that. So anyway, the paper cutout sort of helped me. I love the line of a paper cut instead of just a drawn line. It's something like I can let go of the precision. But also it's exact in the sense that once you cut it, it's done. You can't go back and do it again, like you can erase a line. And so that kind of permanence is good for me too, because I have trouble letting go. I would go back and re-erase, and this just means I have to be finished with that. And so so that's kind of where I started, was paper cutout. And then I moved into cutting in general. So like I did blocks, sort of like if you want to go to the slides ahead, the block prints that are just black and white, really. And that, because when I was paper cutting, I was thinking a lot about this sort of balance of the negative space and the positive space, which is, there's a concept called notan in Japanese art that has that quality about it. And that has a lot to do with the way I think about what I create. So I started with blocks like these, and then I learned other printing strategies. So Ginkole is another type of printing where you carve the lines and you put ink in the lines, and then you print that ink onto paper, and then you collage the paper. So it was very similar to my other collage, but now my lines were from a printmaking process. And then I moved, yeah. It's really fun to play with all these printmaking strategies. So then the final one is in the first slide. Because I was stuck home and I didn't have a printing press. And so I was thinking, how could I do sort of screen printing? And so I made myself these sort of makeshift screens, just cut out, so it's still cut shapes. And then I painted through the holes, kind of. And so I could use the same screens in different ways. And I thought that was really fun because I never knew what I was going to get really until I picked up the screen and saw what I had left behind.
I definitely have had my fair share of printmaking. I do lino cut, and
yeah.
I love that, like the surprise of lifting the paper or the block and like, wow, and like seeing the final product. This is cool.
Yeah, I love that about it too. So that was sort of my evolution.
Oh, love to hear that. So what has led you to incorporate plants that offer human sustenance, caffeine, and oil?
Yeah, all these plants and fruits and vegetables and everything started during COVID because
Mm,
I felt, I've spent 25 years gathering family, chosen family, and everyone I love around at the table and cooking for everybody. I love cooking. And so it was very sad to be home alone and not be able to do that for a long time until we could finally do little bits outside and things. But I think missing that drew me to creating art around it. And so everything gravitated toward food.
yeah. Um, it's so good to hear that you have connection with food. I know I do. It's a way that I tell people how much I love them, by baking something for them or having them over and like really just giving them all my love through warm, delicious food. And I love to hear that you incorporate that into your own artwork. And it's another layer to yourself that you are able to express. This is fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very fun to bring it to a visual medium instead of a
Yeah.
food medium.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. So you do a lot of layering, like this one. When you are creating a composition, is there a process that you have when you layer?
um, there are a lot of different things that I think about when I'm layering, but what kind of started me, if you go back to the green pot, the green flowers,
Yeah. Hmm.
that's more a little bit earlier style when I was layering. That's many, many layers, whereas the blue and red is just really a couple of layers, more like a shadow play. But I started layering because I my dear friend and partner's brother passed away suddenly out of the blue, and it was an accident. And I remember, having to still feed everybody, and so being at the wandering around thinking, oh my God, I'm just destroyed inside, but nobody can see that. And I know this is common, probably a no-brainer for many, but for me that was that moment of, oh my God, every person I'm seeing here could be also having that same destruction inside, and I don't know. And it just reminded me of how many layers we are composed of as humans, just how much depth there is to each. And it could be joy too inside, or pain, and all this stuff that we can't see. And we need to tread lightly and be kind to one another, because we just don't have any idea what anybody's walking with, carrying.
Hmm.
So that layer, just the layers of people and humanity, made me think about layering the art to kind of show how some things are hidden and some things peek through a little bit, and some things show more than others depending on the day and the moment. Yeah.
So when you talk about layers and humans and all their complexities, um, do you find that plants also have that correlation as well?
That's super interesting. I
Okay.
didn't really think about that. But sure, I mean, each individual fruit that I'm drawing, and I have it sitting in front of me, they're each so different from one another, even
Mhm.
though it's the same, they're both lemons, but they really look different from each other. When I
Um,
started teaching, we used to do this activity where we would have kids, we'd put a big bowl of lemons out, and they'd have to pick one up and then put it back, and they'd have to try to find the one that was theirs. So they had to be it was an observation strategy. Like, they had
mhm.
to really pay attention to what makes this lemon particular.
Which is very meditative as well.
Mhm.
I remember in high school learning about different religions. I went to a Catholic high school, and they were open enough to let us learn about other religions, which is
Good.
pretty good for that time. And so we're learning about Buddhism and meditation, and we had to take an orange and peel it, and like that's all we were focused on, intently taking each bit off of the orange and noticing and experiencing all that comes out, the smell, the feel, the way it looks, everything. So it was it really opened my eyes, and I think that's really interesting that there's a certain correlation with that.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
taking
the
it.
mindfulness. Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's right. Cool.
There's also another statement I've read, how we could try to replicate something as much as possible, but every time we do something that is supposed to be repeated, it's going to be different at every time, because the circumstances, our environment, the weather, how we feel on the inside, everything is different and it's always in flux. And I believe that, with your depictions of flowers and plants and vegetables, like, you could print and replicate, the same string of coffee berries, but then it's always going to be different each time you lift it off from the board. So I really like that. And, you could try to replicate, but everything's different all the time.
Yeah. I mean, that's what makes it exciting too. Like you're saying, lifting up and seeing what happens. I love that. It's magical.
Um, I love the little details of these two pieces. These are definitely some of my favorite pieces. And I love the little peak of the white that you have. Is that a layer that you put on the bottom?
Yeah, so when I'm painting through the screens that I cut,
Mhm.
when I want to put another color on top of a dark color that's already there, I put the white down first. But what
Okay.
was sort of a magical serendipitous thing is it didn't exactly register. And so you get this little highlight, which
Mhm.
actually was nice because it would make it look like a highlight, even though the first print wasn't intentional. Then I started to do it like that, but I loved that. It was like, oh, look at that, a highlight.
A happy mistake, and
I
now
know.
it's in a part of your process.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. I love this little aha moments that we have as creators.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else or any commentary?
No, it just
Maybe.
was so fun. It was so fun going to um, the cafe and seeing you there setting up and then going back later and seeing it all hung. It was really fun just to sit there and you guys did a really great job. The show looks great. I hope everybody comes to see it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That was my first installation as program assistant with ArtSpan. So it was a very fun moment for me, and it was great to meet you as well in person. And I'm glad you went back to grab some coffee and you dined in, I believe.
I think we just got coffee. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah,
We
you had
sat
a little
there. Yeah.
moment sitting down
Very
and
nice. Yeah.
enjoy the space. So, do we have any questions for Jennifer so far?
Oh, I can't see it.
I don't think so. Vanessa, any questions? No?
I do have a comment. Let's see. Blanca asks, Blanca says, beautiful piece, Jennifer. I'm wondering if you are familiar with the why papel picado is traditionally created with chisels and hammer.
No, I don't know that. I love papel picado. It's so incredible, but I didn't know it was chisel and hammer. I use scissors for everything, which seems crazy. I know people ask, well, why don't you use an X-Acto? And I just love a scissor so much. There's something about cutting the line that is imprecise, but also exacting. Like I love a line with a scissor way more than a drawn line because I have to let go. I have to just let it be what it is. Things drop away, and that's the shape I have now. And anyway,
Excellent. Thank you. Um, Learning about your work and hearing the inside of your process is really informative, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
thank you.
So we are going to move on to our next artist, Gordon Sizelove. Hi, Gordon.
Hello.
How's it going?
Very, very well, thank you.
Great.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be showing at the Cumaica out there on Mission Street. And I've been out there. I have to say, my favorite drink out there is their mocha frap. And thank you, Vanessa and Nick, for hosting us tonight. And this is a very nice way to present work. It's so different than standing up with a glass of wine and talking to 5 people at once. In some ways, it's better to get specific ideas across. So thank you.
Yeah, our pleasure. We are more than happy to host this reception and to hear about your work. And we're very happy to be able to present your work in a public space and get strangers to look at your work and expand your exposure. So that's what we're all about.
I've been getting a lot of feedback from people who have gone out and seen the work, or some people who live out there. They just happen into the coffee shop, and there it is. And the next thing you know, I'm hearing about they discovered my work out in Cumaica. So very good.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Get your art up in Cumaica. Register to become an ArtSpan member. Love it. All right. So Gordon is a painter who harnesses acrylic as his medium of choice to create vividly dense and flowy compositions. Gordon, your paintings are reminiscent to me of jewels, aerial weather patterns, and water ripples with a tight focus and clean execution. Do you work with any specific sources as you paint?
It's more of a process with me. I'm exploring a lot of formal ideas about line and shape and color. I see painting is presenting kind of a poetry to the viewer, and so there's a lot of language involved in creating a piece. The other pieces, this one is an earlier piece, and I kind of see what you mean with some of the ones that were done more recently. One of the things that I'm interested in is specifically is people, their concepts of things. Like, what is the concept of a line? Is it, is an idea, how does it represent it in a person's mind? How do they think of a line? I've been involved and interested in things like geodesics for a long time. So I think a lot of times of my lines is geodesic lines, and so they're highly textured. They tend to be somewhat having a lot of parts to them, and sometimes they're hidden behind what you're seeing. There's a structure to a lot of my paintings, like with this one, Step. I was involved at the time with, and still am, with geometries such as dynamic symmetry, which is also called the golden rectangle. And so the placement on this piece of everything is somewhat geometric, but at the same time, there's a lot of contrast in this particular piece. Some of the sharpness of the frame, for example, is contrasted against the looser chaotic brushstroke, or the blurry chaotic brushstroke of the red triangle. This one called Step, and the space in it, the blue recedes, and then in a way the red triangle kind of takes a step forward from the blue, but it's also behind the yellow. So it's your basic, red, yellow, blue. The blondness of the wood right away is in the kind of the second frame that you can see there, and then the space is created, from the reality of the frame. It kind of goes into maybe the irreality of a painted space. So in a lot of ways, at this point, I'm still exploring the idea of, what is it to think about these concepts, the ideas of the more formal elements that one finds in painting.
Very fascinating. I would not have expected internal structure that happens within these paintings. Moving on, you write in your statement that you work a lot from your feelings and dreams. And when you're painting, do you experience a sense of lightness in your soul as you incorporate those feelings and dreams into your work?
I have really strong feelings about my paintings and my work, but I hate to use the term, but I tend to think of my paintings as I actually love them. I mean, I either really respond to them in a way where this is great. This is what I want to do. This is me. This is worth working on. This is worth my time. I'm not so sure about the lightness because I probably tend to overthink and worry an awful lot about whether this is coming across is what I want, and how could I improve it? You know, how can I make this better? You can see from comparison to the last painting, the first one, Step, I've gotten a lot away from a lot of the straight lines, and in this one, the curvature of the space, the curvature of the lines, that it's a lot more free and a lot more feminine, and and a lot lighter than, let's say, the that first painting, Step. I think in some ways painting them, I'm hoping that people experience them as I do when I'm painting them, because what's happening is as I put a color on, each color will change the entire look of the painting, and so there's seeing that change, seeing it develop. You really kind of see the end result as being something that's homogeneous, where everything's working together, and you kind of realize that if something was missing, the painting wouldn't be the same. One that I did, these were from 19, and the last painting was again a pandemic kind of related change in my life. With these, I was still dealing with a real space. You can't really see it, but this painting is floating, and so there's space all around the canvas, floating in between this very real frame, and then the frame and the color of the internal structure are harmonious, and they work together. But you're going from like reality. One of the reasons it's a dream is you're going from reality into this painted space, which is kind of an imagined space. It's a space that's created in a person's mind by looking at it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really exist any place but, you know, in your mind as you see it. If you know you see the space in it, it's you that's creating it by looking at it. And that's something that I really enjoy exploring, the way that the mind works. I really lately have been trying hard to get people to reflect as they look at the painting, what they're thinking, and how their mind changes, and as they look at a painting, from first glance to second glance to experiencing it, maybe to living with it, and to hearing maybe different interpretations. You know, paintings have auras like people, because they're real, and that's another thing that I'm trying to bring out in an artwork is that aura of the artwork, the fact that it's made by a human being, and it's a human to human communication. So it's an expression of consciousness, which lately I've been thinking an awful lot about. You know, what is the relationship of consciousness to the universe? You know, and to painting, and as such. I mean, people kind of take it for granted. So I guess one of the things I'm trying to do is get somebody to stop taking it for granted and start to think about, you know, what it is that their eyes are doing and their mind are doing. This one is called Dance. The thing that happened during the pandemic that I changed in my artwork was I eliminated, or you don't see it, but so I guess I eliminated the figure ground relationship. There's no more, there's not an object and then space around it anymore. The painting itself is the object, and the space is a space that is created by you looking at it in your mind. And again, with a painting like this, what I see in it is, because of the curved space, the fluidity of it, the way that it doesn't really seem to be weighted down that much. I see freedom and creativity, you know, in the work. I try to express a sense of freedom here, and also how to define creativity exactly, but you know, a sense of exploring space, a sense of exploring aesthetics, and what can possibly be seen. These are made with the lines first drawn, and then it's a kind of a growth process. I don't start with an image like your first question. I don't start with an image and try to reproduce anything. I kind of grow the paintings as they're painted, and they kind of a geodesic line. The line is broken down into these shapes and forms, which break it up completely. But at the same time, you can still see the effect of the original lines. In comparison to the first one, the step where everything was linear, like that rectangle, and it just kind of stood there. This one flows a lot more, and you'll find, I think, as you try to zero in on some areas, that it changes before your eyes. You'll start to become aware of something different, a different color combination, a different way the forms fit together.
This is a perfect transition into my next question, talking about your color usage, which you definitely are very impressive of, making sure the colors don't overpower one another. And I was curious about your color selection process. Do you test colors against each other, or do you kind of just use your intuition and you kind of let it go?
Well, as I get ideas, I work through various drawings. First, maybe charcoal drawings of the background and the structure. But then after that, I work with pastels to work the colors out. So I'll do pastel drawings and try to get something that I like in the way of the color and its movement and its relationship. You can see there's obviously, even though like I said, I kind of eliminated the figure ground, but there's still a dark light relationship here. There's still a contrast, a lot of contrast in the selection of the colors. Overall, there's probably, or there is, a kind of a central color that I'm trying to get, but it's not necessarily one that you're seeing. It would be more by the way that they combine together. Some of the colors are very similar to each other, and some of them are very different from each other, especially the lights and the darks. And on that last painting, there were some colors that are transparent and some colors that are very opaque. And that's also another contrast that I work with. So a lot of it has to do with, creating a contrast that your eyes can respond to. I really see these as being eye-centric. Very much so relate, because they're topographical, they relate directly to the topography of the eye, of someone's eye. It's like flat against flat. If you want to switch to the next image.
And just a note for our viewers, these next 4 paintings are not included in the exhibition. These are just color theory examples to show Gordon's color process.
The one on the right here is an earlier, and from the 90s. It was a style that I'd worked with for a long time, and I considered this, again, kind of a geodesic, synergetic relationship with, I'd been involved with exploring Buckminster Fuller's ideas of triangulation and geodesic domes and those kind of things, and kind of used the idea of that triangular structure in my work. And at the same time, you can see a kind of a similar color sense where the color itself makes your eye move around. This is an interesting slide because this is my latest painting, which I just completed up here, which I call Homage to Madame Curie. It's a large painting, about 40 inches by 25 inches. And it has, as you can see, kind of a geometry in it that's a little obvious. These are spirals, or originally when I first started it. And it surprised me as I worked on it, because other kind of spirals occurred as I worked on it that weren't planned. And the idea, of a spiral related to Robert Smithson's spiral jetty, for example, the idea of entropy, which is why I kind of related it to Madame Curie, besides the idea that, she was fascinated with the color of radium, and she actually used to sleep with a vial of radium under her pillow. And used to stare at it at night. And the idea that somebody could be so obsessed with a particular color, and kind of intrigued me. And that green in that painting is really kind of brought out for, kind of as the color of radium. With the rest of it, this is very much of a blurred painting, in the sense that it's very not specific, but I believe I can safely say that the idea of blurring in artwork nowadays comes from the idea that our understanding of the world is somewhat blurred, and or it can be. There's a, you know, as one's understanding becomes more clear, it becomes more clear. But it's at the beginning, you see things in a way that aren't very distinct, and that painting kind of brings that forward for me. So that's the latest one. But I wanted to show that one that had the colors together, the detail.
Mhm.
So this one, the detail of it shows. It goes back to your question about how the colors are not that strikingly opposed to each other. It's not a high contrast, because you can see that what I'm doing with this is I'll put on a layer of color, and then I have to wait for it to dry, and then I'll put on another layer of color, and as the colors optically mix underneath each other. So you have these tertiary colors that create kind of a harmony. They make the painting look a lot better than if it was just, you know, a red and a green fighting against each other. They the colors have the mixtures in there too, which creates a lot nicer picture. It's a lot easier to look at than, and even though it might not be so striking, it's certainly, I think, more pleasing to see that. But so this is almost like almost a color study in itself. I really like the work of well, a lot of the color artists. Thinking of Joseph Albers and Mark Rothko, people who.
I would love to open the floor up to any questions for you, Gordon, if there's any questions in the chat.
More. The painting on the left
Mm-hmm.
is 64 inches high.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a chance to show it yet. It's about 2.5 feet across, and it's very large, and I call that one Spirit. And looking forward to an opportunity to show it. But this again shows a little bit of the evolution. This one came before the paintings that I said have more curved space and curved lines in it. You can see this one, the lines are all very, very straight that I started with, and there's kind of a rectilinearity to it. But the space itself from the bottom, everything's very close, and by the time you get to the top, everything's very kind of far apart. So it creates this kind of uplifting of space. And so thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Yeah, I really appreciate that. If there are any questions in the chat.
Yeah, we actually have a couple of questions that came up during Gordon's presentation. I'll go in reverse order. So since we're on this slide, Kit asks, what inspires you when choosing colors for your work, i.e. current one on the slide? I'm assuming it's this large piece.
That's a good question for that one, because that one specifically was inspired by stained glass. So I studied a lot of stained glass. In fact, the idea that the painting kind of soars as it goes up and the space opens up is similar to as one looks up at a stained glass, it kind of lends itself to an uplifting look, a taller look. But I did a lot of studies of specific stained glass, and that one in particular kind of gave me the feeling of, especially in ancient times, people were very mystical about colors, and colors themselves, the way they were mixed is far different than nowadays, where, you know, we just go and buy a tube. In those days, when to make the colors of glass in glass, or, you know, in the 13 or 1400s, there was an awful lot of thought put into, you know, what exactly the color might mean. You know, why you're using a particular color with a particular shape or form. But overall, it just gave me the feeling of a kind of a certain kind of spirituality that I was trying to get across. It's a lot more than the other paintings. It's a lot more spectral. It really kind of has those 6 main primary colors, the 3 primaries and the 3 secondary colors as a subject, and just to see how I could use those in a way that is somewhat striking and, you know, captures your eye. Again, sometimes I think of these works as a little bit related to what used to be known in the 60s as op art, which I know a lot of people haven't thought about for a long time. But the idea of appealing to the eyes specifically appeals to me.
Great. And I have another question here. A question and comment from someone who had to step out just a few moments ago, but they wrote, does Gordon know the work of Barbara Takanaga, maybe? Barbara Takanaga. He might like her. In case he's not familiar with her work, I discovered her 2 years ago and I just love her work. So
I'm not familiar with that. However, I will look into her. I've discovered artists recently from some shows that I've looked at, which really surprised me because sometimes you go and make a painting and then you see that somebody made a similar painting in the 1920s or 1930s, and even though the sensibilities are different, there's still kind of a you can tell that there's an affinity to certain kind of work. The people were kind of on the right track, but maybe I have a more 21st century take on some of the ideas. So I'll look into Barbara Takanaga.
Awesome. Great. Well, I love that those connections are happening.
Thank you.
And then we have another question about, what is the largest piece you've created?
Some of my paintings are around 6 feet. I try to stick with a human scale. I like paintings to be intimate still, and I try to work on paintings that I think people would take into their homes. Of course, I would like to be able to work on a huge gallery scale or a huge museum scale, but for the time being and what I've been doing, I tend to think of the shape of a human body as what I relate to, certain like the shape of a face. When I'm working on a painting that's about that size, I relate to it kind of as face to face. And then the painting, this one Spirit, is about the size of a person. So a lot of my paintings get to be about 6 feet, 7 feet, some of them. But I'm right now trying to work on smaller pieces that hopefully the people will appreciate.
Awesome. And then there's just one more question, and then I think we should bring Jennifer back in case anybody has had some time to ruminate on her pieces and might have some questions for her as well. But the last question I have for Gordon was, somebody asked early on how you start your pieces in terms of like, do you start at the center and work out? Are you more of like an edge and work in?
They work from the lines which are really not seen. The lines are buried in the painting. And so I'll start a line and then it grows from the line. It would go out. I've seen, I relate to my paintings and the shapes from the forms is both being macroscopic and microscopic from images I've seen through microscopes and images I've seen through telescopes. But as I paint them, I think more in terms of a plant growing or perhaps ice forming on an icicle or on a lake. Or perhaps if you've ever seen salt form on rocks or things like that, it's kind of a buildup. So I build from the original lines, and then I kind of build out from the lines. And so the lines are there first, and that's the process where at first the line becomes a lot of these smaller shapes. And it kind of keeps its what I would consider a geodesic line. It keeps a very organic quality to it as opposed to a straight line. One of the things that intrigues me is if you draw a line on a piece of paper, it could look very straight, but if you look at the same line under a microscope, it looks like a vast conglomeration of various shapes that have no relationship at all to a line. And in some ways, I think a lot about that as I make these and I work on them. The fact that I do consider them kind of growing more than I consider trying to reproduce any image or reproduce anything photographic or anything that would be considered real.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm gonna bring Jennifer back on to join the group, and we have a question for Jennifer in the chat as well. Hi, Jennifer. So somebody asks, Jennifer, can you talk about how you monoprint with wood panels?
I don't print with the panels, it's onto the wood panels, but that I had to come up with a lot of different unusual printing techniques because I didn't have a press during COVID. And so, initially I just started with block print because that was something I could press pretty easily onto something. But then the wood panels, I think what they're talking about, if you want to go to the image, is the coffee trees.
Okay.
And so then I moved to, like I was talking about, the intaglio with the Gime Collet and having to print each color individually, just like using a spoon to press that ink out of the cracks onto the paper as hard as I could. And then I thought, well, what else, how else could I print? And so I thought about screen printing, and I of course didn't have any screen. So I just started, again, going back to cut shape. And so I started cutting shapes. And so for the coffee trees, it was really fun to do because I cut all these different shapes and I used them over and over, but in different ways. So I lay down a shape and I would print different colors through it. So the dark and the light. And sometimes if I wanted to print another color on top, I'd print a white and then the color to get this these images emerging. And it was really a fun process because I never knew what was gonna, like when I would pick up the screen, I didn't know what I was gonna see under there. And so I did a lot of different versions of the coffee tree with all the different shapes that I'd cut. And I tried larger, smaller, different strings of the coffee beans and different colors of red and different colored background and all of that. It was really fun to play with the different shapes in different ways, use them in different ways.
Yeah, now that you say that you printed white first, I'm so glad there's certain areas that it peaks out because it really makes a pop, and I really enjoy that detail, and I wouldn't have not known that before.
Yeah, that was fun to figure out, like, and like that's what brought me joy too, is just the reveal. You know, that's what I love about printmaking, is you sort of don't know what's gonna happen, and then you open the thing and poof, there it is.
Very cool. Any more questions for Jennifer?
I'm not seeing any in the chat currently, but if anybody's feeling bold, they are welcome to unmute themselves and engage directly with Gordon or Jennifer or even Nick. Nick is also an artist. So.
Yeah, I am.
But yeah, I mean, right now, it's pretty much, we're wrapping up. So feel free to, shout us out.
Like I said before, you can see these artworks online on our virtual art gallery. You can also go to Cumaica Coffee and see the artwork there. The hours are listed. They have wonderful coffee and wonderful tea, good snack options. That is our website. So any other questions or comments, compliments?
Thank you so much. It was great to hear all about your process, Gordon. I really appreciated that. Thanks.
Well, thank you.
And viewers, you can switch over to gallery if you want to take a look at everyone who is with us tonight.
And I have more of a comment. I got the opportunity to see all the works in person when we were installing, so that was really great. And also, since Nick is running the Art in Neighborhoods program, it's like a surprise to me most of the time what's coming in. So seeing so much color, and if any of you swing by Cumaica, like Cumaica itself has like orange walls, and it's so vibrant. So I really encourage everybody to go check it out and really see these works in person and see how they like dance and communicate with each other, Gordon and Jennifer's work, and their like beautiful use of just these color combinations. And so, also just to speak to Nick's eye for being able to pair artists so well. It's such a great show, and it has such an impact on this coffee space that I'm really excited. I'm glad I got to see it in person. I don't live in the city, and I highly encourage everybody to go check it out. And if you're not in the city, take a trek out there, check out the exhibition, get a drink. I know Gordon plugged his favorite drink at Cumaica, and I'll plug that their bagels are very delicious. So you get, how often do you get like a full hefty breakfast or lunch and also get to see some amazing work and really see all of those colors dance together and let's like mingle. So that's it for me. I don't know if anybody wants to mute themselves and have some comments for us.
It's definitely a departure from Starbucks art. Original art, amazing. And you could take it home with you.
Yes.
Well, if there's no further comments or compliments, I'd love to give a toast to our artists. We have a little glass or something, raise them up. Cheers to you. Thank you so much for sharing your process and your creative work. Thank you so much.
Thanks for hosting us.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Woo!
And to hopefully
you.
next time in person.
Definitely. Yep. We're working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
It's so
you.
great to see your
Thank you.
faces.